On Monday evening, just after 6:15, I was startled by the doorbell. To my surprise, it was my cousin, Jake. Since I usually get home past midnight, I figured he forgot my routine. Inviting him inside, I grabbed a couple of beers and we settled down to watch the game. Jake seemed disappointed that my wife Emily wasn't around. She had called earlier, mentioning she'd join us after grabbing a drink with her colleagues. I was looking forward to her arrival, especially since it had been weeks since we had any intimate time together. She often complained of headaches or being too tired. Jake left around 8 o'clock, and I dozed off in front of the TV, which is pretty rare for me. When I woke up, I noticed Emily's car parked outside, but she hadn't come to wake me up for bed, which seemed odd. We finally shared some intimacy, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that she always had an excuse ready to avoid it. It made me question my worth to her. This pattern continued for weeks. One night, out of frustration, I asked if she felt disconnected. Her response puzzled me, but I reassured her she was perfect for me, though I doubted her honesty. From my point of view, this was a moral dilemma. Being honest about our physical relationship was crucial, but it had to be handled delicately. Despite my love for Emily, doubts lingered even after she accepted my proposal, leaving me uncertain about our future. One night, trying to wake her up for some affection, she groggily muttered, "Oh, it's you." My disappointment flared into anger. "Who did you expect? Someone else?" I shouted, unable to contain my frustration. "What's going on? Who are you seeing?" Angrily, I grabbed my shorts and stormed downstairs, snatching a beer. I retreated to the patio, trying to cool off and make sense of the situation. She seemed interested at first, but quickly lost interest when she realized it was me. Her dismissive tone felt like a slap in the face. As I gazed at the night sky, doubts about her honesty started creeping in. How would I afford a detective to uncover her secrets? It seemed like she could read my thoughts, showing no remorse, as if saying, "Oh well, he knows now." Restless, I decided to watch some TV. Finding a blank tape, I popped it into the VCR and settled in to watch last week's NCIS. The video shocked me. I paused it, sneaked upstairs, and found Emily asleep. Back downstairs, I resumed watching, only to see my wife with my cousin Jake in our bedroom. The camera angle suggested it was hidden in the closet, capturing their actions. Betrayal hit me hard, and questions flooded my mind. How many times had this happened? Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice broke the silence. "What did I do to deserve this, Emily?" Emily's frantic voice snapped me back to reality. She was on the phone, begging someone to answer. Seizing the phone, I confronted her, making her recoil in fear. "Tell Jake to come get this tape," I demanded, warning him to stay away from me. "Thanks to you two, I don't need a private investigator. You've handed me all the evidence," I spat. Grabbing the tape, I kissed it and played it on the TV. Emily trembled, asking, "What will you do?" "What do you think? I'm divorcing you," I snapped. "I don't want a divorce," she pleaded. "Why not? You clearly don't care about me," I scoffed. Ordering her to leave, I hid the tape and brewed some coffee, compiling a to-do list for the morning. Though our state didn't have a no-fault divorce law, infidelity could influence the court's property division. Discovering her affair shocked me, but at least she wasn't on the house deed. As I made my list, I heard Emily leave. I pondered the rapid shift from love to hate and focused on my next steps, grateful for online resources. Heading to my room, I noticed the blank tape on the TV was gone. I smiled, hoping Emily had taken it without watching. Back at my computer, I secured my finances, transferring most of our joint account funds to my personal savings and canceling joint credit cards, keeping mine intact. Satisfied with my protective measures, I slept soundly. The next morning, I went to the bank, secured a safe deposit box in my name, and transferred valuables from the one Emily accessed. At work, I told my secretary, Linda, to intercept any messages from Emily and inform her of our impending divorce. Each action reinforced my independence, readying me for the challenges ahead. Linda informed me that my boss, Charles, wanted to see me urgently. As soon as I arrived, his assistant, Jessica, directed me straight to him. "You're late at a bad time," he said as I entered. You need to catch the next flight to Dallas. Morgan's company is refusing to sign the new contract, and I need you to handle it." I hesitated, explaining my need to deal with Emily, who threatened my home in my absence. Charles reassured me, offering to handle the legal matters through his trusted lawyer, Richard Ellsworth, whom he highly recommended. Charles set it up so I could contact Ellsworth while I was on my way to the airport. Jessica had taken care of my reservation. Despite my personal turmoil, I couldn't ignore the importance of this assignment. I hurried home, packed my things, and secured the house before heading to the airport. On the way, I called Ellsworth. He offered advice and assured me he'd help however he could. After navigating through airport security, I checked in at the Delta counter and waited in the boarding area for my flight to Dallas. Thinking over the lawyer's advice, I concocted a story about Jake's threats to Emily, justifying a restraining order. "If he tries anything, I'll teach him a lesson," I lied. "Emily even said she'd love to see it," I added, deepening the deceit to keep her in check until I returned. Despite the fabrications, I felt justified given Emily's own treachery. Ellsworth assured me the restraining order was possible, but warned that a hearing would be required in 10 days to finalize it. My trip to Dallas turned out to be productive. I quickly resolved the contract issue, earning Charles's praise. He informed me that a locksmith had visited and his son-in-law had secured the house while I was away. During my stay in Dallas, I made courtesy visits to 2 other clients before boarding Flight 720 home. Checking my phone, I saw multiple missed calls and voicemails, mostly from Emily. Ignoring her messages, I listened to Ellsworth's urgent plea, urging me to call before things got worse. His voicemail confirmed he had secured a protective order and would serve it to Emily at her workplace the next morning. I thanked Charles for the recommendation. Arriving home close to midnight, I was approached by a sheriff's deputy asking for ID. After showing my driver's license, I thanked him for watching the house, assuming he was Charles's brother-in-law. He handed me a ring of keys, explaining that all the locks in the house had been changed. Emily had visited twice, getting furious when denied entry. Inside, I noticed the answering machine blinking but was too exhausted to listen to the messages. I turned off the phone and went to bed. The next morning, I checked the answering machine and found all the messages were from Emily, pleading for me to call her. Too late for that, I thought. At work, Linda informed me that Emily had been persistently calling, but assured me she hadn't been able to reach her. I thanked Linda for her support. She joked, "You say that to all the girls," as I kissed her forehead. In Charles's office, I updated him on the situation and expressed my gratitude for his help. Charles asked about my plans. "Next, I need to move on with my life. Maybe find someone who actually cares about me," I replied. Charles encouraged me, saying things would get better with time. Back in my office, I focused on work. I called Ellsworth, who confirmed the papers would be filed by 10 a.m. and offered to serve them to Emily before lunch. I agreed, and Linda invited me to lunch. We went to a local diner where she offered support, understanding the difficulty of divorce. "I could use some cheering up," I admitted. Linda handed me a paper saying, "Here's today's cheer-up attempt." Glancing at it, I found a list of names. "What's this?" I asked. "A list of women interested in you now that you're single again." Flipping through, I noticed a few surprises. "Rachel from accounting, isn't she engaged?" "She was, but she broke it off after catching him cheating." "Do you really think she's into me?" I asked. "I know she is. She once said she'd go for you if you were single," Linda replied. I scanned the list again. 7 names, and besides Mary, 2 others caught my interest. "So you're saying they're all interested?" "I've heard them express interest in you," she confirmed. I grinned. "I noticed your name isn't here." "I thought about it, but given the circumstances, I'd rather not," she explained. "Why?" "Because you're married, and I'm just starting a divorce because my wife cheated on me," I reasoned. "Exactly. I figured dating a married woman wouldn't be on your mind. You gamble," she said. "I thought you and Harold were solid." "We were until I found out he was cheating with his secretary. Instead of divorce, I'm choosing kindness," she admitted. "You're wrong. Even knowing you're married wouldn't stop me. You should have put your name on here. You'd be perfect for me right now." "Now I know you're joking. I'm far from perfect," she laughed. "That's where you're mistaken. You have one characteristic they lack," I teased. "And what's that?" she inquired. "You're married and they're not." "You'll have to explain that," she remarked. "Right now I don't need an emotional connection. It would be too easy to get involved with the three on your list I'm interested in. You're already engaged and seem keen on retaliation with your husband. If we got involved, it would be strictly physical," I explained. "Are you serious?" she asked. "Absolutely," I affirmed. "Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't pursue a married woman, but if she's free, that's a different story," I clarified. "What about a long lunch then?" she suggested. "Not today, but tomorrow I'm free," I agreed. "It's a date." Hypocritical, not at all, I thought. According to Ellsworth, once Emily received the divorce papers, wed legally part ways. At 2:45, Emily called, knowing she'd likely been served. I answered, "What do you need?" I asked bluntly. "Why can I get into the house? What's with the divorce? Why are my credit cards not working? And the protection order?" she demanded. "Just out of my mind," I replied curtly. "Your cards are inactive because part of divorcing a cheating wife involves canceling her credit cards. And you can't enter the house because you're no longer living there, and I don't want you in. Jake, this has to end. Risking everything for a meaningless fling? It meant nothing. I love you and only you," Emily pleaded. "I see it differently. You betrayed me, which is why I filed for divorce," I retorted. "We need to discuss this in person," Emily insisted. Against my better judgment, I agreed. "Where and when?" she asked. "Not tonight. You're not coming into the house," I replied. "You can't keep me out," she protested. "Actually, I can. The house is in my name. You'll collect your things with a court officer present," I stated firmly. "Let's just talk it out," she suggested. "Not here," I insisted. "You're being unreasonable." "Where then?" Emily demanded. "Tomorrow, 6 p.m. at Marco's Cafe. We'll have some privacy," I proposed, ending the call. I wondered if Emily truly believed her excuses would sway me. Sadly, she did. She thought I was naive, probably because I had let her off the hook for years. That evening, I headed to the Whispering Pines Tavern after work, hoping for a distraction. It was trivia night, and I needed something to take my mind off things. I sat at the bar, and Lizzie greeted me. "The usual, Dave?" she asked. "Yeah, a cold one and some company," I replied. "I've got you covered," Lizzie said, pouring my beer. The trivia host started. "First question, what's the capital of Australia?" I joined in, shouting, "Canberra!" It felt good to engage in something light-hearted. The night continued with more questions and laughter. Lizzie joked, "You're on fire tonight, Dave." I left feeling a bit better than when I arrived. Maybe there's some truth to the saying that distraction is the best remedy. The next day at work, as soon as I settled at my desk, Linda reminded me of our lunch date. Despite a hectic morning, Linda and I headed out for lunch at 11:30. On the way to the Marigold Hotel, I asked if she preferred eating before our plans. She chuckled and said, "Having a full stomach makes me sluggish." I checked us in under the aliases Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, a nod to Emily's affair with Jake. Once in the room, we wasted no time, and the rest of the day flew by. It was soon time to meet Emily at Marco's. Arriving ahead of her, I secured a booth in the quietest corner. Ordering my usual, I settled in to wait for her. When Emily showed up 5 minutes later, she looked as stunning as ever. Normally, her presence would stir certain desires in me, but knowing her betrayal, that impulse was gone. As she sat down, she ordered her customary martini, visibly irritated when I requested separate checks. Sipping my beer, I prompted, "All right, Emily, you called this meeting, so what's on your mind?" "Honestly, Dave, you could have been more courteous given the circumstances." "Emily, you're lucky I haven't torn you apart. Speak up or I'll walk out," I warned. With a sigh, she said, "You're blowing things out of proportion, Dave. We don't need to divorce. I love you, always have, always will. My affair with Jake means nothing to me. Yes, it happened, but it was just physical. Most of the time, I can't stand him. He's never posed a threat to you or our marriage." Why did you prioritize him over me if he means nothing to you? I didn't. Yes, you did. Reflect on the past 6 months. How often have you been there for me? Mostly reluctantly doing favors. Think about the last 3 weeks. I've heard your excuses every night and stayed out of it while you've been enjoying yourself elsewhere. And you call that love? Being exclusive to me hasn't been that brief. For 3 weeks you've been avoiding me. When you finally say you'll be home, you just go straight to bed and sleep. When I tried to initiate something, you were all for it until you realized it was me. Remember that, Emily. Remember that, oh, it's you. I'm tired. Leave me alone. That's all. Oh, you said it all, and then that tape was the last straw. Then why even tell Jake these things? Because Jake likes hearing it. He has some pathetic need to feel superior to you. I tell him these things to boost his ego. There's nothing wrong with you in bed, Dave. You've always satisfied me. Then why seek pleasure with other men? It's not other men, Dave. It's only Jake. So you don't consider it cheating on me if it's just Jake? That's not what I meant. Regardless, whether it's one man or many, enjoying another man's company while married is cheating no matter how you spin it. Answer me this. Before seeing that tape, would you say our marriage was good? Maybe okay, but not great. I dated Jake before we got married, and it didn't affect us. Did you entertain my idiot cousin before we tied the knot? Yes, I did. Then why marry me at all? Because I love you, Dave. I don't even like Jake that much. Then why are you enjoying yourself with him? Because he provides something you can't. Look at it this way, Dave. Think of Jake as just assisting you with me. You're crazy if you think you can convince me of that. If that's all you want to discuss, then we're finished. I began to rise from my seat, and she interjected, You'll never persuade me that infidelity is acceptable. You lack any evidence to support that claim. Don't forget, I have the tape you and Jake generously made for me. Are you certain? Absolutely, I affirmed, walking away from her. As I made my way to the door, a grin crept onto my face. Apparently, she hadn't checked the tape she took from home, unaware it was blank. As I reached for the car door handle, I heard the rapid click of heels behind me. Turning, I saw Emily, breathless and clearly upset. Dave, please, I need to get into the house. I need my clothes and belongings, she pleaded. Although I knew I was being tough, I felt justified. Have your lawyer contact mine to arrange it, I replied coldly, sliding into the car. Rolling down the window, I said, Goodbye, Emily, and drove off as she called out, Wait, Dave, just a minute. I could have let her follow me home and retrieve her things without much hassle, but at that moment I thought, forget her. If she didn't already have a lawyer, it would take her a day or two to find one. Since it was Thursday, I figured the earliest she could secure one would be Monday, with another day needed to organize her return to the house. By then, I would have packed all her belongings in garbage bags, showing little care in the process. If I were lucky, she'd have to take everything to the dry cleaner or laundromat before using them. Was I resentful toward Emily? Absolutely. Our relationship had been a series of betrayals and lies. That night I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. On Friday, I had a leisurely lunch with Linda as we wrapped up an intense work week. Linda asked about my weekend plans. Upon learning I had none, she proposed, How about spending the weekend with me? I'd love to, but how will you keep it from your husband? He's gone on a fishing trip this weekend. He packed up this morning and left straight from work. I'm free until Sunday at noon. Silly girl, let's see. Dinner and a concert tonight, then a cozy morning at home on Saturday. More fun Saturday night followed by a lazy Sunday brunch. Sound good? Sounds perfect, but let's skip the concert and focus on the fun. Deal. Your energy never seems to fade, and mine needs a break sometimes. After returning to work, I told her I'd pick her up at 7 and to pack for the weekend since she wouldn't be returning until Sunday. Upon arriving home, I discovered Emily hadn't wasted any time finding a lawyer. Entering the bedroom to change, I noticed part of Emily's closet was bare. Most of her belongings were gone. Curious, I investigated how it had happened and found a broken window in the family room facing the patio. Though I couldn't prove Emily was responsible, I derived some satisfaction from spotting blood on the glass shards, indicating she might have injured herself climbing in. I called a glass repair company, scheduled an appointment for the next day, and decided to leave the mess until morning. With that decision made, I headed upstairs, showered, and dressed for my evening with Linda. We dined, danced, and enjoyed cocktails at a lively bar. Although we retired at 11, sleep eluded us until 3, leaving me utterly exhausted. After Linda had her fill of me, I set my watch for 9, anticipating the arrival of the glazier between 10 and 12. However, Linda woke me at 7:20 in a delightful manner. While waiting for the glazier, I tidied up the broken glass, finishing just as he arrived at 10:10. By 10:40, the repairs were completed, and by 11 o'clock, Linda and I were enjoying a late breakfast at Rosie's Diner. Following our meal, I asked Linda what she wanted to do next. "Just relax and cuddle, that's all I want," she replied. And that's exactly what we did. By 5, feeling recharged, we ordered takeout and continued our leisurely day. We decided against intimacy on a full stomach, choosing instead to lounge on the couch and watch TV for a couple of hours. However, our TV viewing was abruptly interrupted mid-program by an unexpected phone call from Emily. Sunday morning arrived with the realization that I would have to return Linda to her husband. This sparked a thought, which I voiced over pancakes at the Village Inn. "How much time do we have left?" I asked. "What do you mean?" Linda responded. "When are you planning to leave me?" I clarified. "Why do you think I'll leave you?" Linda questioned. "From what you mentioned about Harold, I thought you were just casually flirting, not involved in a serious relationship." "Maybe, but it wasn't my intention. Typically, the men I encountered became possessive, wanting me to leave Harold for them. However, none of them could match the lifestyle I have," Linda disclosed. "I couldn't imagine trading a comfortable home in a nice neighborhood for a one-bedroom apartment, wondering if we could afford bills each month. Plus, they weren't any better in bed than Harold, and they were messy," she continued. "And I always wore my wedding rings," Linda admitted. "I don't get it. You sought attention knowing they knew you were married," I remarked. "True, but I wasn't seeking a replacement for Harold. I just wanted retribution. Holding on to them if they were skilled in bed didn't mean I was emotionally attached," Linda confessed. "Admit it, if they started stalking me knowing I was married, do you think I could ever trust them if I made the relationship permanent?" "So I'm just another fling?" "Don't be ridiculous, of course not. I've been working for you for over 5 years now, and in all that time, you've never once flirted with me. Consider what brought us here. Dave, I pretty much gave you an open invitation. You made it clear that you'd never pursue a married woman, and you didn't. I offered, and you had the good sense not to refuse. If anything, I'll be the one to end it. I can assure you of that. If it does happen, it won't be any time soon. Do we have time for one more round before I have to take you home?" She grinned, and we drove off. As Sunday night turned to Monday morning, I felt a glimmer of hope despite everything going on. During my commute to work, I couldn't help but think about the weekend with Linda and realized our relationship had to change. With the divorce proceedings against Emily, her lawyer would be digging up dirt on me. If they found out about Linda, it could spell disaster. But I wasn't ready to give her up. I'd suffered enough while being married to Emily. When I got to the office, I called Linda in to discuss my concerns. "I have some thoughts, but they might be risky," she began. "Go on, let's hear them," I encouraged. "First, we need to replace these uncomfortable chairs with a couch. It looked like an office upgrade," she suggested. "That's doable," I agreed. "Also, you often stay late at work. I can stay late too, to assist you. Once the couch is installed, you leave first, and I'll wait 15 minutes to make sure no one is following you before I leave," she explained. "Sounds like a solid plan," I said. "Another idea is booking a hotel room. I'll call you with the room number. You use the elevator to the second floor where the conference rooms are, then take the stairs to the designated floor. We can't do this too often, though. It might raise suspicion. To make it believable, we'll hang a Do Not Disturb sign on a conference room door before anyone arrives via the stairs. But ultimately, they'll need to see us together. If we arrive and depart separately, we'll be fine." I asked Linda to schedule the conference for the next day and then sent her back to work. It was a busy day, and I didn't get around to ordering the couch until late afternoon. I decided to pay for it myself without waiting for approval. At 5, I called Linda in and told her to inform her husband she'd be working late on Thursday. "The couch arrives at noon," I said. "How did you manage that so quickly?" she asked. "I took care of it myself. No need to involve accounting," I replied. Linda smiled, then gave me a quick kiss as the office door was open. "I was hoping we wouldn't have to wait until Thursday," she whispered. "Don't forget about tomorrow's conference with Ajax," I reminded her. "Oh, how did I forget?" she laughed. Despite Emily blocking the driveway when I got home, my good mood persisted. She had parked her car in a way that stopped me from getting to the garage. I parked behind her, forcing her to move. As I got out of the car, she approached me, saying, "We need to talk, Dave. Things are getting out of hand." Ignoring her, I walked to her car and opened the door. I grabbed her purse, dumped its contents onto the seat, and pocketed the money. "You still owe me $14 for the broken window. We have nothing more to discuss," I said coldly. "Dave, I love you. I don't want a divorce. We can work this out," Emily pleaded. "No, Emily, it's over, especially after finding out you betrayed me before we even got married," I said firmly. She looked defeated. "I had hoped you'd see reason, but deep down I knew you wouldn't. If you're set on divorce, I'll fight you. I won't settle for a 70-30 split," she threatened. "You need to take responsibility for your actions." "Infidelity remains a fact," I replied. "You'll have to prove it, Dave. You can't. It'll be your word against mine. I'll deny it and claim you're trying to cheat me out of my fair share. You might face consequences," she shot back. "Don't forget I have evidence of you with Jake," I said. "No, you don't. I took that tape and destroyed it. It's your word against mine, and without proof you'll lose." "You destroyed it? Jake will never forgive you. He needed that tape. He might even lose interest in you for destroying it." "I don't care about Jake. I want you," she insisted. "Well, you still owe me $14 for the window," I stated, walking away. She pounded on the door and rang the bell for a good 10 minutes before finally leaving. Watching her drive away, I smirked, knowing she hadn't checked the contents of the tape. I wanted her to rack up legal fees, only to find out I still had the evidence. That night, I slept soundly. My Tuesday conference with the Ajax representatives went smoothly, boosting my spirits. Wednesday wasn't bad either, especially when Linda suggested a quick rendezvous on my desk at day's end. After ensuring everyone had left, I agreed. When we finished, I reminded her of her late shift on Thursday. On my way home, I decided to stop by the Landing Strip Lounge. I didn't know it was open mic night, making it hard to find a seat. Eventually, I secured a spot at the bar. I was there when Bobby Denton, a local comedian, took the stage, making everyone laugh. Just as I thought the night couldn't get better, they announced a surprise karaoke session. I decided to stay and watch. The mix of amateur comedians and impromptu singers was a perfect distraction. Eventually, I took the stage myself, singing a classic rock song to an enthusiastic crowd. For a moment, I felt like a rock star, free from my burdens. Leaving the bar, I felt renewed. Yes, life was complicated, but there were still moments of joy. As I headed home, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would work out in the end. The following day brought 2 bits of good news. Firstly, my lawyer informed me that Emily's legal team had reached out, indicating her intent to contest the divorce. This news made me smile. Secondly, the new black leather couch I had ordered was delivered. I chose leather, anticipating the inevitable wear and tear. It proved to be a smart choice, as Linda and I soon left a few marks on it later that afternoon. The subsequent weeks flew by, filled with frequent rendezvous with Linda, mostly on the couch after work. Occasionally, we made use of the conference room, acknowledging the superior comfort of a bed over the couch. During this period, Emily called me almost daily, professing her need for me and insisting that I couldn't win. She suggested we move on and forget everything. While I could have ended these calls by changing my number, I derived a twisted satisfaction from telling her she was wasting her time. Meanwhile, Ellsworth and Emily's lawyer were busy with legal wranglings. I hoped Emily's lawyer charged by the hour, as I had negotiated a flat fee with Ellsworth, making me indifferent to the duration of the proceedings. Ellsworth knew about the tape's existence but never disclosed it to Emily's attorney. They proposed that if I changed the grounds for divorce from infidelity to irreconcilable differences and agreed to an equal property division, Emily would stop resisting. I instructed Ellsworth to counter with a 65-35 split, knowing she wouldn't accept. Ellsworth informed me he had to notify the opposing party about the tapes before presenting them to the judge, as failing to settle beforehand would anger the judge. I authorized Ellsworth to use his discretion, trusting his expertise. I started to notice a stranger tailing me wherever I went. It could have been paranoia, but the suspicion grew stronger each day. Another week passed, and Ellsworth called to inform me that Emily and her attorney wanted to meet. I told him to arrange it and inform me of the time. He later notified me it would be Friday at 10 a.m. I arrived early at 9:30 to discuss matters with Ellsworth. We decided to have the tape present at the meeting, but I wanted to toy with Emily one last time. The meeting began with the usual formalities. Emily denied the infidelity accusations, claiming I was being unreasonable. I interjected, reminding her of the tape she and my cousin made. "No, I don't," she retorted confidently, aware that she believed there was no evidence to support my claim. "I'll make you a deal, Emily. If you sign the papers now, I'll agree to a 60-40 split, but you have only 2 minutes to decide. If not, we'll leave it to the judge," I offered. "I won't agree, Dave. You have no proof," Emily replied stubbornly. "Sure, Emily. I have a tape of you and Jake," I stated confidently, anticipating her reaction. Just as I hoped, she became enraged, blurting out, "Damn it, Dave. I already told you I destroyed the damn tape." "Oh, so you admit to infidelity and destroying evidence?" I remarked, watching her eyes widen in realization. "No, that's not what I meant," she backtracked. "Never mind, Emily. I offered leniency, but your stubbornness has led you to reject it. Let the courts decide," I said. Emily's lawyer interjected, "If you indeed possess evidence, you better reveal it now." I gestured to Ellsworth, who moved to press the play button on the TV VCR positioned at the table's end. "This is your final opportunity, Emily. I'm willing to settle for a 60-40 split, but once he presses play, the offer is rescinded and we proceed to court." "Screw you, Dave. You've got nothing on me," she spat. With that, Ellsworth pressed play, and I rose, declaring, "See you in court, Emily," before exiting the room. Before I even left the building, my phone rang. It was Ellsworth. "They're interested in making a deal," he said. "No thanks, I offered her an out, but she refused." "Full steam ahead," I replied, hanging up. My actions only intensified Emily's phone calls. In response, I disconnected the house phone. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles and passionate moments with Linda. Despite the chaos, I felt more in control than I had in years. And as I prepared for the courtroom showdown, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. Linda knew better than to transfer Emily's calls to me, leaving my cell phone as Emily's only means of contact. I kept the same number just to toy with Emily, finding a strange satisfaction in ignoring her desperate calls. Meanwhile, Linda kept my life more than interesting. 3 days after the tense meeting with Emily and the attorneys, Linda approached me with a worried look. "Dave, we've got a serious issue," she said, her voice trembling. "What's wrong?" I asked, fearing the worst. "Harold has to fly back to Ohio for a week to deal with his parents' estate. He'll be gone for 7 days. "So what's the problem?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "How are we going to manage an entire week together without getting caught?" I thought for a moment before coming up with a plan. "Here's what we'll do. You leave work half an hour before me, drive to my place, park a block away, and make sure all the curtains are closed. When I get home, we'll have our time together. In the mornings, I'll leave first, drawing any potential followers. After a short wait, you can head to work. We'll do this until the weekend when we can figure out something different." "Sounds like a plan. But what about the weekend?" she asked, looking hopeful. "On Friday evening, when you get home, we stay indoors the entire weekend. Think you can handle 2.5 days with me?" I teased. "I'm more worried about whether you can handle 2.5 days with me," she replied with a smirk. "Let's give it a shot." We executed our plan, and the week went by smoothly. However, once it was over, I felt a pang of sadness as Linda returned home to her husband. I had grown accustomed to her presence. She was more than just good company. Yet deep down I knew that once my divorce was finalized, I would need to find a replacement for Emily. I valued marriage and longed for a stable relationship where I could fall asleep next to a loving partner and wake up with her by my side. While I could envision a future with Linda, she never indicated she would leave Harold. I sensed she was content with him despite his flaws and would stay with him as long as possible. Reflecting on the list that had sparked our affair, I mentally reviewed it. There were 3 people on that list, none of whom seemed suitable as long-term partners. 2 of them smoked, a habit I couldn't stand due to growing up in a household with heavy smokers. Liz from accounting, the only non-smoker, was attractive but too young for me. Our age gap suggested we might lack common ground. A brief encounter in her office where she was listening to rap music, a genre I disliked, reinforced this belief. While the idea of a fling with Liz was tempting, I doubted we could sustain a lasting relationship. These thoughts occupied my mind during my Monday morning commute. At work, I was swamped with tasks, too busy to dwell on personal matters. I was so preoccupied that I had to decline when Linda popped her head into my office asking if we were going to lunch. Just before wrapping up my day, Bert Ellsworth called. He mentioned that Emily was eager to resolve the matter. I understand your stance on bargaining, but offering her a 60-40 deal to sign immediately might be wise. Infidelity typically influences asset distribution, but with 2 out of 7 divorce judges being women, they often lean towards a 50-50 split regardless of grounds. We might end up with one of those judges. Settling now could be in your best interest, he advised. After a few moments of contemplation, I instructed him to propose a 65-35 split as the final offer and gauge her response. During the downtime, Linda entered my office requesting some time on the couch since she missed her extended lunch break. I granted her request. The following morning at 10 o'clock, Ellsworth called to report that Emily had agreed to the 65-35 offer. He mentioned she would arrive on Wednesday at 5 o'clock to sign the papers and requested a brief meeting with me. Although I saw little purpose in it beyond giving me another chance to confront her, I wanted to conclude matters swiftly to avoid further inconvenience to Linda. I informed Bert that I'd be available at 2 o'clock to accommodate her request. We convened in the conference room, and I took a seat waiting for her to speak. Recognizing my silence, she took a deep breath and began, "I don't want this, Dave. I know you may doubt it, but I love you. Perhaps we can find a way to reconcile and stay together." "Absolutely not, Emily. Not after discovering the extent of your infidelity. Let me be clear. If it were a fleeting affair, I might consider reconciliation. Suppose you had a series of regrettable encounters before our marriage, followed by years of fidelity until one resurfaced, leading to a brief affair. I might have been able to forgive that, but a long-standing affair before we even committed to each other? No chance whatsoever, Emily. There's no resolving this. You lavished love on the man you claim to barely like while the one you profess to love went without. It's futile, Emily. It just is. Is that all? Can't you please give us a chance, Dave? She pleaded. I can't, Emily. I'll never trust you again, and I refuse to live like this. I rose and made my way to the door. Pausing, I added, You're an attractive woman, Emily, so I doubt you'll be single for long. If you find someone, I hope he treats you as poorly as you've treated me. With that, I exited the room and headed to the landing strip lounge. Taking a seat at the bar, Karen served me a PBR and asked, Where have you been, handsome? Dealing with a divorce and not in a very social mood, I replied. Karen offered a sympathetic nod. Hang in there, things will get better. I spent the next hour sipping my beer and watching the comings and goings of the bar's regulars. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. As I left the bar, I felt a slight sense of relief. Yes, my life was complicated, but at least I was moving forward. And as I drove home, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would eventually turn out all right. I told Karen, I'll be stopping in for a beer or two to unwind. "Does that mean I have a chance to charm you now?" she teased with a playful glint in her eye. "I thought you were content with your boyfriend all these years," I replied, smirking. "I was, until I realized he wasn't what I thought," she said, leaning closer. Feeling like I'd had enough, I signaled for the bill. When Karen returned with my change, she flashed a smile and said, "When your divorce is finalized, don't forget about me, all right?" "I won't forget. Take care," I said, leaving the bar with a light heart. Karen's unexpected interest in me was a pleasant surprise. Once Emily signed the divorce papers, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Although the final decree was still pending, I felt liberated from the constant surveillance. Around 10 o'clock the next morning, Linda walked into my office, a mischievous smile on her face. "What are our lunch plans?" "How about we meet at the hotel? I'll book a room," I suggested. She grinned. "No need for that anymore. Emily signed the papers yesterday, so we can be more open now." At 11:30, we headed to the Marriott. As soon as the door to room 4003 closed, we leaped onto the bed, unable to keep our hands off each other. Later, as we were getting dressed, Linda asked, "What's the plan now?" "What do you mean?" I replied, still catching my breath. "Now that you're free from Emily, what comes next for us?" I paused, taken aback by the question. "As long as you want me, I'll stick around, but eventually I'll look for a wife. I enjoyed being married." "What qualities would you seek in a wife?" she asked, her eyes curious. "She should be attractive, love me, have the patience to deal with me, and be a decent cook." "I can cook," she offered, her tone serious. I stopped, realizing her intent. "If you meet the criteria, I'll consider your application, but I won't be involved in bigamy." She looked puzzled for a moment before it clicked. She beamed, "Don't worry, Harold's days are numbered." A concern crossed my mind, evident in my expression. Linda noticed and asked, "What's bothering you?" "We don't have to hide from Emily anymore, but now we have to be discreet because of Harold. It feels like we're swapping one set of secrets for another." "I doubt it'll be necessary for long. I'll present Harold with a choice, infidelity or irreconcilable differences. I have evidence of his affairs. If I threaten to expose him, he'll likely agree to irreconcilable differences to protect his career. Harold wants to climb the corporate ladder, aiming for a VP role, but the CEO and several board members are devout Christians. His chances will plummet if his affairs come to light. It might inconvenience me for a week or two, but we can handle that." Following my suggestion, Linda arranged a meeting with Ellsworth for Friday. She asked him to draft 2 sets of documents, one citing infidelity and the other irreconcilable differences. Just before the bank closed on Saturday, she withdrew half of the checking account, all her savings, and 4 of the 6 CDs from the safe deposit box. Returning home, she gathered Harold's belongings, loaded them into her car, and checked into a motel. By 3 p.m., she was back, preparing dinner. During the meal, she confronted Harold with PI reports detailing his affairs. She informed him that she intended to divorce him and had taken steps to secure her finances. She presented him with 2 sets of divorce papers and set a deadline for his decision by Monday morning. As expected, Harold called her, opting for irreconcilable differences. On Wednesday, they met in Bert's office, where Harold signed the documents. Linda decided to stay at the motel for the weekend to let things settle. Later, she moved in with me, and we planned to live together until our divorces were finalized, then get married. However, this posed a problem. Linda excelled at her job and wanted to keep it, but our company had a policy against relatives working together. While we could both stay, one of us would eventually need to relocate. The nearest facility for transfer was 90 miles away, which was impractical. So we decided to keep our marriage a secret. Linda kept her surname, maintaining her health insurance until we were discovered. If that happened, she would resign and find another job, though she didn't really need to work given my substantial income. She checked out of the motel on Sunday and moved in with me by 3 p.m. The next 2 months passed quickly without incident. I began to relax and let my guard down. A mistake. Emily called once or twice a week, and I usually answered to tell her off, finding a perverse satisfaction in it. I should have expected her persistence. On a Wednesday evening, Linda and I were at the landing strip enjoying a few drinks. We frequented the place occasionally, though not always on Wednesdays. However, we were there that night to support Shelley from accounting, who was trying her hand at stand-up comedy. We applauded her effort, but both Linda and I agreed she was better suited to her day job. Shelley's routine started with a joke about a man reading the newspaper who gets hit on the head by his wife with a frying pan. "Why did you do that?" he asked. "For the paper I found in your pocket with Jenny's name on it," she replied. He explained that Jenny was the name of a horse he bet on at the races. We laughed politely, but it was clear comedy wasn't Shelley's forte. As the evening wore on, we enjoyed our drinks and chatted about the future, feeling optimistic about what lay ahead. Apologizing, Shelley resumed her routine, trying to salvage the performance. So a few days later, the man is watching TV when his wife smacks him again, this time with a bigger pan, knocking him out cold. When he wakes up, he asks, "Why'd you do that?" She says, "Your horse called." After some polite laughter, she moved on. There was this elderly couple who stayed married for years despite hating each other. They argued so loudly that the neighbors could hear, and the old man would always threaten to haunt his wife if he died first. The neighbors were convinced he practiced black magic because of strange occurrences around their house. When he died of a heart attack at 85, they had a closed casket funeral. The neighbors were worried he'd come back to haunt them, but his widow just laughed and said she buried him upside down so he wouldn't know which way to dig out. Just then, a commotion broke out. "Keep your damn hands off my man, you strumpet!" Emily's voice cut through the noise, dripping with venom. I turned to see her dumping a drink over Linda's head. Before I could react, Linda threw her own drink into Emily's face, sending her sprawling to the floor. I grabbed Linda and pulled her outside, trying to clean us up with some rags from my car's trunk. Suddenly, Emily stumbled out the door, bleeding from her nose, and who should be there to help her but my obnoxious cousin, Jake. "You rotten son of a cow!" I yelled, launching myself at him. He let go of Emily, who crumpled to the ground and took off running. I chased him for 3 blocks before giving up and heading back to the parking lot. When I returned, I found Linda pinning Emily against a car. Linda was yelling, "Get it into your thick head. I didn't steal him from you. You threw him away, and I was lucky enough to catch him." As I approached, Linda backed off, saying, "Let's go. Get in the car. I need to talk to Joe inside." I found Joe, the owner of the bar, who assured me there was no damage. He even joked, "Next time, do it during intermission so the customers have something to watch when no one's on the mic." Back outside, Emily was waiting at the entrance, but Linda was already in the car. Emily stepped towards me, pleading, "Please, Dave, give up the divorce. I'm dying here. I need you. I love you. We can work this out." "You must be the dumbest person on the planet, Emily," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "You're professing your love for me while your current fling is the reason for our divorce, and you're not even discreet about it. You need to let it go, Emily. The only feelings I have for you are hate and disgust. Leave me alone." With that, I walked around her, got into my car, and drove away. Both divorces were finalized, and I proposed to Linda. She surprised me by saying, "Ask me again in a year. Let's see if we're truly right for each other after living together for a while." I waited a year and proposed again, and this time she said yes. We opted for a civil ceremony at the courthouse, not wanting another big wedding. Emily ended up marrying Jake, but their marriage didn't last long. Jake had been cheating on her with several other women, one of whom gave him a disease that he passed on to Emily. While cheating on me seemed acceptable to her, being cheated on was a different story entirely. She couldn't tolerate it. 6 years after my marriage to Linda, Jake made the mistake of attending a family wedding that I also happened to be at. I kept my long-standing promise to him, and it might be a while before I receive another invitation to a family celebration.